This is Tim.
This is Jonathan.
And welcome to the final regular episode of The Average before our season finale that is the 13 Nights of Halloween. If you're a new listener, we're glad you're here. And for our returning fans, thanks for coming back for another deep dive into the world of film. Today we have a special treat for you. We're joined by none other than Paul WKS Art, a fantastic artist whose work you'll probably recognize from the book covers he's done for our friend Ivy Tholen. We're super excited to have him with us today to talk about the Autopsy of Jane Doe. And if you're new to the show, here's how we work. We don't go through a movie scene by scene. Instead, we break it down from a craft perspective, looking at everything from the script to the acting to the editing, music, and all that is between. By the end of our conversation, you'll have a solid idea of whether this movie is worth your time without worrying that we've spoiled all of the good parts for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm a huge fan of this movie and a huge fan of you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Sweet.
I knew when we started talking to Ivy, I loved your book covers. Your cover of Tastes Like Candy was why I started reading the book, if I'm honest.
That's great.
Yep, it sucked me right in. And so when we started getting connected with her and talking with her, I was like, man, it would be great to have Paul on the show someday. So I'm glad you're here. Glad you're here.
Yeah, I just saw you posted a video the other day of the process of drawing up the cover for the new book. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Mother Dear's is coming out, tomorrow, I think? 26th? Yeah, I'm excited about that one. And the cover took the longest because it's every other cover has had like just one person on it, and this one had two. And I really had to make the human character, which is rare for me to draw, but the human character, I was trying to make it as realistic as possible and really make Ivy proud because her stuff is great, and I wanted to make sure that the cover was just as good.
Well, it looks fantastic. I'd say kudos to you, man. You did some good work.
Thank you.
It does. I was in awe of Mother Dear's hair, if I'm going to be honest. You sent that picture, and I was like, holy crap, Mother Dear's hair looks amazing. But I got an early copy of that book, read it, loved it. It is it's different from some of the other stuff that Ivy's written, but it's also very much in the same vein. So I say she cranks up that dark sense of humor that's been present there before, cranks it up to 11 in this book. And I had an absolute blast reading it. It's a great time. So if you've read any of the other Ivy Tholen books, if you've enjoyed her being on our show, if you enjoy Paul's covers, go check out Mother Dear. It might be a little bit easier to swallow for those of you who don't like horror, but it's a great book. I'm excited. I hope it does really well.
Yeah, same.
So let's dive in. The Autopsy of Jane Doe from 2016. It is a critically acclaimed horror film directed by Norwegian filmmaker André Øvredal. If I say that right, I'm trying. Known for his earlier success with Troll Hunter. So that's actually a great movie too. I did see that.
I liked it.
I haven't watched it. I've seen it. I think it's in like my list somewhere. I just haven't got around to watching it yet.
So I mentioned I have my friend from Norway, so still trying to get her to come on the show. But Troll Hunter was a movie that she suggested to me, and so I saw that years ago. But this film marked Øvredal's first English language project and demonstrated his skill in creating atmospheric, character-driven horror. The film centers on Tommy, played by Brian Cox, and Austin Tilden, played by Emil Hirsch, a father-son team of coroners who are tasked with performing an autopsy on a mysterious, unidentified woman found at a bizarre crime scene. She's known only as Jane Doe. The woman appears to have no visible external injuries, but as the autopsy progresses, the Tildens uncover increasingly bizarre traumas. The deeper they dig, the stranger and more inexplicable the findings become, hinting at something we might never have seen coming. As they continue, supernatural occurrences begin to unfold, revealing that Jane Doe may be more than just a body on the table. What starts as a routine autopsy quickly turns into a night of terror as the coroner team realizes they're dealing with something far beyond their normal skills. So, Jonathan, you want to kick us off? That was the story premise. I briefly mentioned to Jonathan, I don't know if we can... I'll let Paul be the deciding factor here. Since you're the guest and you were the inspiration for this because I saw you post about this movie and I love this movie.
Yes.
I kind of think we should go about this without revealing who Jane Doe is.
Oh, that's going to be so tough.
Dude, that's really friggin' hard, man.
Okay, if you think it's too hard, I think it's like knowing who she is kind of takes away some of the suspense. So for first-time viewers, but if we want to just go for it, we can go for it. I'm fine with that. We don't normally withhold spoilers, and this movie's been out for 8 years, so I'm okay with it. We can go ahead and spoil things.
I say we try not to, and then maybe towards the end we can get into some of the like the later parts where it's like, okay, you can't talk about this without.
That's okay. We'll just see what happens. We'll talk about it. And if it comes up, it comes up. It's going to come up. Jonathan, what do you think of this story?
Dude, this is fantastic. Like this, I really, really like this movie. Very unique concept that I don't think I've even seen a shred of like really anywhere with how they set this up and the way it was written out.
This was a first watch for you, right?
Yes, first watch for me. I had no idea about this. And I love Brian Cox, and Emil Hirsch is cool. The way they laid it out, just so awesome. This whole idea of you've got the son who's come back to town for a short while because of what seems like loss in the family, so he's got his own plans in the same type of field as his father, who's running the morgue and does all the autopsy stuff for like, the local police and whatnot. And he's following those footsteps, but doesn't want to stay there. His girlfriend's like, hey, when are you going to tell him, kind of a thing. And so like you get this whole notion where he's only there temporarily. His dad maybe expects more, just hasn't got around to explaining to him yet. And still wanting to make sure that his dad's okay with this loss of his mother, and, his dad's wife and all that. And things just get so weird. And like he just sees, like the son is so inclined to stay and try and help his father, still caring, even though he still like has that need to want to get out of that small town area kind of place, and just go do his own thing instead of just being stuck in the family business. And then just the craziness that ensues once they really start to investigate what's going on with this body that's been found at this crime scene, in just no circumstances to really explain how this body got there or how it's even connected to the crime scene that it was found at. They show these pictures where the body's partially buried and like pristine. And so just like, trying to think of a word here, but I don't know. It's like it defies any kind of like rationale about what's going on here. And so as they delve into it, even though the son decides that spending time with his girlfriend, he's going to stay and help his dad power through this. He doesn't want him to do it alone. He's still so concerned. And things just get so weird. And like the deeper they go, you don't really get to see any kind of movies where, there's a big focus on the autopsy and like it is the main focus of the whole thing. I mean, you see little bits and pieces in that in certain movies. Like if you watch like Men in Black, they got the weird little morgue scenes there. Yeah. And you see some other small parts like that in like more gruesome, darker movies, but it's not something you see as the overall thing where everything is set in the morgue. And
it's like
with
a horror episode of CSI.
Yeah, exactly. So like super scary CSI. And as they delve and like start to uncover all these secrets about what's going on and understanding and inferring, and it was just so crazy. And then the way the movie ends, man, it just blew me away. I'm all up on this, all points, dude. Full five.
Yeah. Awesome. Paul.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was saying in my notes, I was like, I've seen movies with autopsies in them where it's not the main focus. There's an autopsy scene and then they move on. This is like one of the only movies where it's the autopsy is the movie. And the only other one I can think of is like the Alien autopsy movie from I think 86 or whatever. Like this, that old movie where that's all it was, and obviously it was a hoax, but this fictionalization of this autopsy is so great, and it's so unique, especially with Jane Doe being who Jane Doe is. And I thought for compelling, let's see, so that's what I had for unique. For compelling, it's one location, like he said. It's all in the morgue. It's one of three main characters doesn't move for 99% of the movie. Like it's so unique, and it's you just keep guessing the whole time. You're like, what is gonna happen? How is this gonna wrap up? Because it just keeps getting further and further into this mystery of who this woman is.
Mm-hmm.
5 stars. 5.
Yeah. So I think I first heard of this movie watching one of those Shudder horror documentaries. Typically because like surgery videos, I could never really handle. I don't do well with that. So I had always avoided this one for fear of it getting a little too surgical. And then I saw it on a documentary and I was like, it looks like I can probably handle that, or it looks like it would be worth sitting through, even if I have to look away a little bit. I don't have to look away at all during this movie. It's very tastefully done. But on top of what you guys said, I'm glad you didn't get to where I was on it, because I'm just adding on to everything you said, which was spot on. But there's that line where he says, imagine if all of this internal trauma was reflected on the outside, and she would be unrecognizable. And it's just like, when you get into the depth of this movie, it's far deeper than just a body on the table and finding out the mystery. That's the hook. Like, yeah, I'm curious, but we also have that story about he's in town because of the loss of his mother. Or it would.
I feel like it's there's a lot of like setting up the universe in the first 10 minutes or so of the movie.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they're like, okay, that's out of the way, let's get to this autopsy, and then it's balls to the wall, just the autopsy for 80 minutes.
Yeah.
Or surrounding that.
And
they really don't go into much of the in my opinion, much of the Tommy Austin history.
It's a very mild side note for sure.
They don't go into the father-son dynamic. I didn't think so. But instead what we got was the guilt from the dad in that scene where they're kind of hiding from the spirits. And the dad brings up his mother and how she felt a certain way and how he never noticed. And she carried that all by herself. And I noticed that like mirror of the Jane Doe carrying these wounds by herself. And it's him seeing that in her on that table and realizing that he never saw it in his own wife, the hurt that she had. And so that was one of those that I appreciate. It is it's not blatantly obvious, and I love that about it. And it is, unfortunately, his conversation comes at what I would consider the only down point in the movie. Like, it just comes to a halt all of a sudden, and we get that talk, and then it gets going again. But I also just love towards the end when he says that she was most likely innocent and she was created by the people who hurt her. So through their fear and lack of understanding about her and about this situation, she turned into what she is. And this idea of it's a traumatic notion that the judgment we put on others in our lack of understanding hurts not just them, but ends up hurting ourselves. That's my main takeaway from it. Like, I think this movie succeeds at delivering great thrills and service level fun and tension, and it's an awesome movie. but I do think it also manages to deliver a little bit of moral lesson about judging people and traumas that we try to bury, and seeing it in others through the dad realizing that the traumas she has might be similar to what his wife was going through, whether it was physical or emotional, that doesn't matter. But seeing those parallels, I love the story for that. So
I love that take on it. I also think, being that there's hallucinations, right, and self-inflicted injuries because of those hallucinations, I have, every once in a while I'll watch this, because I've seen this multiple times. Every once in a while I'll watch this and I'll think, how much of this is a hallucination? How much of this is Brian Cox taking his, Brian Cox's character, Tommy, taking his personal grief and projecting that onto this Jane Doe character, and she's running with it. It's not necessarily that she was, because because of who she is, it's possible that she's playing with him. She's saying, "Oh, you have this grief. Oh, your wife, died of, I think, cancer, right?"
Yeah, I think so.
She's playing on that.
He has emotional susceptibility.
She is 100% an unreliable narrator in this case. And how much of this is real? How much of any of this is real? Like, there's several instances where, like Burke, the cop, they hear him talking and it's not him. Yeah. And it's like, this whole night could have been completely hallucinated by these two poor men who were doing this autopsy.
Yeah. It makes the movie a trip. And I've never thought about them hallucinating what's going on with her. So that's another layer to it that I haven't gotten into yet, because I always just kind of assumed that the hallucinations were what she used to keep them trapped. So that is how I took it, because every time they tried to leave, there was something going on, or there was a reason to stay that she created in the film. So there's a lot of ways. To me, it's
like, what did she want from them, though? Why was she keeping them there and keeping them alive?
Yeah.
There's more to her motive than just, hey, I want to hang out with you guys.
That's for sure. There's a lot to unpack in this movie. It's one of the things I love about it. The story for me is a 5. As you can see, there's a lot of different ways to take this film, and that just makes it awesome. I think we were 5s across the board on that.
Yeah.
But we can get into the character arc a little bit there.
Man, I'm all about the character arc on this, but it's sad. It's just sad how it goes. But then how it carries on with the other of the main characters, as it were, in the film. Austin, he's clearly got a life elsewhere, just wants to make sure dad's okay. His girlfriend's really trying to push him to really be like, hey, let's get on this. Let's get done with this. Let's get the hell out of here. Let's get back to our lives, kind of situation. And he's like, he wants to commit to her. He wants to give her his attention, but he's just got that hook, in him from his dad, and him finally, like, even through all the crazy shit that they go through in this film before they really come clean about their emotions and what's going on with everything and their plans, while they're sitting there in the dark of the elevator, all beat to shit, and scared out of their minds. Them finally getting everything on the tape, like, off their chests, and, really being able to, like, put it out there, even talking about, like, his, Tommy's wife and what she was dealing with, like you guys were saying already, the emotional burden she was carrying by herself, and how people carry a lot of that, every day. They've got their own battles that they fight and no one else watches. And so, like, him finally, like, coming clean, and his dad and him being straight with each other, knowing what it is, has, a sense of impact. It's important. And then you think that he's going to get out at the end. You think that by the end he's going to be okay. He's going to be free before, you know, it all comes crashing down, which, like, it was so hopeful. Like, he's going to make it. It's going to be okay. Or Austin, his son, anyway. Yeah. Tommy, you know, clearly, you know, shit goes down. Even though, you know, it's just sad. It's a sad arc, man. And you think that they're going to be okay. And then, you know, just doesn't pan out well. But then with the Jane Doe, how that still carries. Like I said, you don't want me to spoil it, so it's hard not to talk about it, damn it. You guys are killing me.
Go ahead.
Let's do it.
It's going to be too hard, so
just do it.
So with Tommy, it's sad because Tommy gets taken out by his own son, even though it's intentional. Like, Tommy wants him to, like, go ahead, do this. Let's just get over with, whatever. Yeah. You know, this is just the way it's going to be. And you think Austin's going to get out, but then, you know, Jane Doe keeps fucking with him, and he ends up just falling out from high up. He thinks, like, with this whole hallucination of what's going on with the being a tree in a storm and locking everything up, him thinking he's finally going to get out and then falling out and just totally beefing it and just being dead. Yep. It's a sad way to end. And then seeing how the body gets taken out, and they're like, well, we still got to find out what's going on with his body. Get it out of my county. Get it out of my county.
Like, get it out of here. I don't want it.
I'll take it over here. Just get it out of my county. I don't even want to know. The guy already has a feeling. And seeing how the Jane Doe continues to carry on, and who knows who's going to be next in dealing with this body and what's going to happen to him. It's twisted, but I gave it a 4 on the character arc. You know, it was very emotional. It was very deep, feeling all the terror and the trauma that they're bringing out, and then realizing what's going on with this body and who she is really and what she's been through is amazing. It's just amazing. And then they come to realizations about, with Tommy trying to communicate with this dead body, as it were, you know, and letting that, you know, the spirit of the body or whoever, you know that it's going to be okay. I'm here to take your pain situation, and then finally, you know, eating it at the end, man. Whew. It's hard. It's brutal. I'm trying not to give too much detail. I'm trying to give room. But yeah, well, 4 on character.
If you don't spoil it, I'm going to go ahead and spoil it on my turn. But or if Paul does it before me.
Yeah, I might, because I also gave it a 4 for character. I think Tommy and Austin, pretty well rounded. Not a lot, you know, delving into who they are or any kind of real arc for them. They do have like the moment in the elevator and the moment in the room when they were hiding from the bodies walking around. So they had a few touching moments where they rekindled their father-son relationship, and kind of briefly talked about their mother, but I don't feel like they really grew as characters. From start to end, they were both just like, I'm fascinated by this body. Let's figure out what's going on. And that, you know, that's, I don't have a problem with that. I think what character shines the most is Jane Doe, and she doesn't move the entire movie. She doesn't move. And the fact that they find her in the basement of a house where everyone has been brutally murdered, nothing's wrong with her. She's partially buried. They bring her to the morgue, and horrific things happen, and then they ship her off to another county. It's like this was just one blip in her journey across the U.S. in destroying all of like everybody in the world. It's crazy to me. By just having that opening scene and then him saying, "Get her out of here," it bookends this little slice of life into like, how long has this been going on with her? How long has she been doing nothing and killing everybody?
Is it just an endless cycle?
It's an endless. I love it. They didn't. I'll talk about this more in the script, but they left just enough out where you're like, I need to know more.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
So I wrote a couple notes down for the character arc. My real one is that I said the real character arc here is Jane Doe, who, since we're going to go ahead and give spoilers maybe without telling you precisely who she is, she starts this movie as the victim and ends it as the antagonist.
Yeah.
And that is fantastic. And the journey through that is so satisfying and rewarding the entire time that this body on a table becomes an edge of your seat character. And it's awesome. You don't see this body move on its own ever, and yet you're terrified of what she's going to do next. It's an awesome arc, and the way it progresses is brilliant. I did make a note that it seemed to me Tommy early on, he says, leave the why to the cops and the shrinks. We're just here to find out the cause. And as he's investigating with Jane, he eventually wants to know the why.
Yeah.
So he does have this journey of like, I'm usually just here for the cause. But then as he's facing these questions that he has no real answer for, he's like, all right, what is the why? Why would somebody do this? So he kind of has this little arc of his own. It's not revolutionary at all, but I found it interesting that he states early, leave the why to the cops and shrinks. And then later he repeats why. So I liked that, and his little journey of the realizing that his wife carried trauma he couldn't see, much like the body on the table, as I mentioned earlier. So I actually gave the character arc a 5, and that is mainly for Jane Doe. The journey of victim to antagonist is fantastic, and I think it's pretty unique. So that's why I gave the character a 5.
Heck yeah. That's all right, too.
Music and sound, Jonathan.
Music and sound. Hooray. So, yeah. Music has its place in this film to a degree. You don't really pay much attention to the music throughout the film, really, except for the parts that you hear when the radio is on, you know, and the way the film uses that to intensify certain situations. They kind of help develop the story. Were really well done. And like, aside from the like music itself, that's just really it. The rest of it is just focus on the story. Really, you're focused on the visuals and what is happening, and the music's just kind of floating back here a little bit. You know, it's more the sound design that really comes through in this movie by far.
Yep.
Man, just some of the sounds that you hear along with what you see with the breakdown of the autopsy and the sound of the saws, the movement of the dead bodies, you know, the scuffles that they have. And
man,
just
some of those body noises are enough.
Yeah.
Like, it puts me on the edge. I don't like it.
Yeah, while they're just taking her apart, man, like the sounds you hear from the cutting and the peeling, it's very visceral and it's raw, but it's like, yeah, okay, that seems like that would sound like that. Okay, that messes with me a little bit, but I thought it was pretty sick, but awesome. And then the way they used like those parts, like the radio throughout those parts, man, super cool. I give it a 4.
Yeah. All right.
Nice.
Paul.
So for music and sound design, I said it was great, but not as memorable. So it wasn't perfect for me.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the standouts, obviously the bell ringing, and you knew in the beginning when he plays the joke on the girlfriend with there's little bells that they tie around the feet to make sure, like, if someone isn't dead, if they're in the freezer or fridge or whatever it is, you can hear them if they're not dead, and then you can save them and whatnot. So when you start hearing the ringing from people who are clearly dead because there's one dude who's like missing his face.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Shotgun.
yeah, he's not gonna be alive. But his ringing bell, you knew it was coming when he played the joke on her, but you still were like, oh, it's still effective. It still works.
It's so satisfying. It's like
so satisfying.
It's a little bit of foreshadowing that you're like, I actually can't wait for this to come into play later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're waiting for it. And then the producers mentioned that they got the original recording of the song that plays on the radio, Open Your Heart. They got the original song from the estate of Stuart Hamblin, and they wanted it because one of the producers had heard it on, I can't remember what he heard, a cartoon, I think. But he thought it fit the theme of the story, which was opening up. The writers talked a lot about opening up.
Opening up.
He's like, oh, well, there you go. Yeah, exactly.
What a
that too.
creepy ass song to be in a cartoon.
I know. I mean, outside of a horror setting, it's just a a little, open your heart, let the sunshine in. It's innocuous, but when you put it through an old timey radio or like a hand radio in a morgue, it just has a whole nother meaning to it. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting that they were just going off of the theme of opening up, and they're like, oh, I know what song to use. So I gave it a 4.
So on to the songs, because this is a rewatch for me. I think this is probably the 4th time I've seen it now. And each time I think it gets better, but I started to notice more. And towards the beginning of the movie, they're just playing rock music, like, oldies sounding rock music. And the first track, while they're doing another autopsy that's unrelated, the first track is just a fun little song, but the lyrics to that song say, I guess I am gonna die tonight. And then there are some other lines thrown in there, and he says, I am in trouble, I know it. And I was like, that's some awesome foreshadowing to just have that segment. That's great. Then I also, I didn't know if I should put this in script, but I put it in sound because it's coming from the radio. It's a background sound to a moment. But we hear the radio host say they're about to have beautiful weather for the next couple days. And that's before everything goes crazy. Then we already mentioned the sounds of bones popping, the move, when he moves the fractured ankles, that one's too much for me. The chest cracking, I'm strangely okay with that one. It's like really? the bone grinding underneath this. Ugh, no thanks. But as they work on the body and the storm starts outside, we get the radio cut in again, but we get a couple screams in there with it, or shrieks, that are perfect atmosphere. And that song you mentioned, the first time we hear it, has that line, it's all about the devil. As it cuts. Yeah,
it's actually, it's a song about, it is a song about the devil. And the way it's sung, it doesn't sound like that at all. If you're not paying attention.
No, it sounds like a nursery rhyme, almost like a children's song. Yeah. But the song plays again later in the movie, I think 2 more times, actually. But the actual score to the movie is fine. It's inoffensive. It does the job. It heightens the suspense when it needs to. But there's no theme from The Diary of Jane Doe that you're going to remember. It is, however, these other songs, like the children sounding song through the radio, that does stick with you. And that's effective. I appreciated the effort that went into lyrics that appropriately fit what's going on. I gave music and sound design a 4. This should be a big one. Editing and special effects, Jonathan.
Well, boy, howdy. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, there's some fantastic special effects in this. I mean, just super awesome. When they tried to light the room on fire, and the way that plays out, and then seeing the flames like die back, like her body while it's a flame and everything else catching a flame in the room. And then like as he's putting out the flames around the room, seeing the flames on the body condense back down to nothing and going out. That was so cool. That I was like, wow, that was pretty amazing. But
I mean, love it when you get excited about something. I love listening to you just talk about it.
So I mean, just watching that scene itself was super cool to me. But the meat and potatoes of it is really the autopsy itself. There's no denying it. Hands down, that's the biggest thing. Like the fake body that they used for this and how real it all looks while the touching and the pushback of bodily meats, you know, and oh God, like the peeling of the skin back as they're like, you know, going through the layers and finding all the designs and markings underneath the skin that, you know, they're like, how the hell did this get in here? You know, how did this get under the skin? And you don't see anything from top, you know, weird shit like that. And then cutting the brain, like the skull with the bone saw and all of that. Oh man, it just looked so real.
So I got to tell you something, Jonathan.
My God.
Might blow your mind.
Uh-oh.
She was real.
Yeah.
That was a real body?
Yeah. The only time it's not real is when there are close-ups of like internal organs or whatever. They use prosthetics. But anytime you see the girl on the table, it's a real person.
Yep. Yeah,
so you mean like the parts where you don't like see the head, like that was all real, that body stuff? Because I'm assuming, or is it just when we see the overview with her face?
When she's on the table, it's her. Yeah. And I do believe, like when you can see inside the chest cavity, that's probably a false chest sitting on top. Like she's probably like in the table a little bit. They've done that for, you know, all the Friday the 13th where someone gets stabbed through the neck or stabbed through the chest. They'll recline the person underneath the table or underneath the bed or whatever, and put a fake chest, and that's the part that, you know, the special effects that they're playing with. But she's actually she's there.
Well, I mean, I know that the actress, she's there playing the character on the table, but I'm just saying all the rest of the times when you don't see her face and everything when they're peeling and cutting and all that stuff, it looks so good.
Yeah,
it's not like your normal gory, crazy, nasty kind of horror stuff that you see when people are getting cut up. This was very precise, methodical, scientific, you know, but still just really visceral.
Yeah.
When you're looking at it.
So I think, to clarify, I think anytime you see her on the table, it is the actress. Anytime you see the cutting and peeling, that's the prosthetic stuff that they're using. So obviously they're not really peeling her skin, but
right, but it just looks really good though with the way they set that up.
It is seamlessly, well, that goes with the editing. They seamlessly edited it together to be so convincing. So yeah,
pretty badass. As far as special effects goes, I love how they did that. And with the editing, man, especially like those scenes through where they're hiding in the one room and, you know, the bodies are beating on the door and everything. Like when, like the hallway scenes before they get in there and like sometimes after, when he's coming around those corners in the hallway there and using that reflective mirror that you see in a lot of places in hospitals, the use of that to see the shadows of the body in the distance. And then as like later on when the body starts getting closer through the lighting and everything, was awesome. And then like also the bell, that shuffle of the body and hearing that bell ring that first time. And they're just like, oh shit, it just got real. Like that body, that's a dead body. That shit's moving around. What the hell? Yeah. Just, man, the editing on that for those sequences in the hallways, you know, and how tense it was trying to get back between the morgue itself or the autopsy room, whatever it is, and then to the elevator to try and get out. And, oh, dude, that was just, man, I like the way they sequenced all that. It was super awesome. Yeah. But yeah, overall, 5.
I completely agree. I think editing wise, very tight, very well done. There's a few times where the jump scares either cut a little too early or a little too late. For instance, on the the cat scare. There's a few cat scares.
There are, yeah.
Yep.
But the one where he pulls the grate down and the cat shoots across in the air conditioning, I think that was not as tight as the rest of the film in terms of editing. But editing wise, loved it. Just like you said, like just and this could be set dressing too, but like when it's the crematorium spills open and fills the hallway with smoke, and then you can kind of see that silhouette with the bell coming through that smoke. I was like, oh my God, this is just so good. The effects, though, special effects, this is where they spent, I believe, a good chunk, if not a good chunk, they should have, because this is the effects on the autopsy itself and on the faceless ghost, I thought were so good. They're so realistic. The crime scene at the beginning, where they had like blood sprays, but then they also had little bits of body in the. I was like, that's something that not a lot of horror films do, or they'll do like bright red blood, like an Argento kind of movie.
Yep,
and
Giallo style.
I love that it was, that coppery dark red blood with little bits of chunks in it, and I was like, that's what it would be like. It's less, not cinematic, it's just visceral and real, and I thought they did an amazing job on the special effects. So I gave it a 5 for sure, straight out the door.
You mentioned the first part I put in my notes is the unsettling realness of the opening crime scene. There's something, I watch enough true crime that I've seen some that doesn't blur out the photos quite enough, and that looks pretty spot on to how crime scenes look. Like that dark, gritty blood instead of the brightness. Exactly. Like
it's had time to set and like dry, so that it gets that darker color kind of look.
It's one of my pet
feel
peeves.
The stickiness in it.
Yeah, it's one of my pet peeves in movies when like blood has it's dried and it's still bright red. I'm like, have you never seen blood? Have you never seen blood dry? Anyways, that's one of my pet peeves. But this movie nails it, and it immediately puts you off balance coming into it because it kind of has this pristine exterior of the house on purpose, because that's mentioned again at the end. The pristine exterior, and they go in and it's just a hellscape of bodies, and it's great. The only other part, other than I wrote prosthetics, the human who was used, and then the prosthetic shots, I wrote all the stuff you guys did, so I'm not going to spend too much more time other than I loved at the crime scene the camera flash used as a cut transition to the next shot. I actually loved it. I was like, oh, it's a nice little like sharp editing, intentional design that I appreciated. So I give the editing and special effects a 5. Script then. Oh,
fun. Sorry, one fun little bit. We watched. My wife and I watched the Joe Bob version last night to refresh. And
I miss it.
They had the writers on there, and the writers and the producer were talking about how when they were researching for this, they went to the LA County morgue, and they said they went into one room and there was like 500 bodies.
Oh God!
Just stacked on shelves, like ceiling high shelves filled with bodies, and they're like, I have never seen something like that before in my life. And that stuck with me that, they one, they did the research, and two, they saw that, and that's part of their psyche in writing this movie, and it's blowing my mind.
That's wild. 500 bodies just stacked. LA. I don't know. I haven't been to LA in years. That's nuts.
And that's just one spot in LA.
Yeah,
that's just one.
Many spots in LA.
One morgue in LA. Yeah.
That's crazy. How many full-time? It makes me want to know how many full-time people are on staff to do autopsies.
I don't know. I don't know. It's crazy.
I feel like with 30, it wouldn't be enough to get through that because people die every day.
Well, I'm not going to find out because I have no interest in trying to be in that field. So, no, thank you.
That was one thing I noticed with, I don't know, I guess story or script was that Burke, the cop, is like, I need you to figure out this cause of death tonight, one night. That's all you get, one night. And I was like, I get it for the story, but that seems unrealistic that you would only give someone one night to figure out what looks like a complete mystery.
Yeah, well, he's like, I got to have something for the mayor tomorrow because it's just such a bizarre situation. Like, it's a hell of a time to put a rush on things. And
yeah.
And it was because he didn't bring the rest of the bodies and ask for them too. It was kind of like, I want to know why she was there, so tell me how she relates. But it's still, I was thinking the same thing when he showed up. I'm like, does he get overtime pay for this? Because he's about to clock out. Yeah, that should be a bonus.
Well, the other bodies, I mean, it's pretty clear that, how they died.
Yeah, right.
It's pretty obvious. I mean, they just take them wherever. But yeah, with 5 of them and then just him, had not much. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's just dump this on this guy and hopefully he pulls through. Sure.
Old buddy Tommy will figure it out.
Tommy will do it. He can do anything. But I guess that takes us to script. Script, I don't have much to say about script, really. It was pretty straight to the point dialogue, with the exception of like the way they're talking about things as they're describing the autopsy while they're doing it. It's a lot of smart dialogue, clinical dialogue kind of stuff, with the exception of the points where they're talking about each other and Tommy's wife, Austin's mom, and all their feelings about stuff. I feel like maybe I overscored on it because I was just in shock of the movie after watching it. I gave the script
I think you're
4.
probably fair. Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, I gave script a 4. But I mean, I can't quote anything. I didn't take any notes on any kind of like special lines, unfortunately. I was being lazy about my notes this time. But I mean, I appreciate the dialogue for what it was and how they didn't really get too crazy with a bunch of extraneous bullshit that you didn't really need. And I appreciated that. So I'll kick it out of 4.
Okay.
For script, I thought it was a very tight script. I think they went in knowing this was going to be an indie film with a low budget, and they're like, let's do this right. Let's do this. That's something that can be done. I mentioned this before, where some of the questions that I have about it are there because they were intentionally left vague. Like, where did she come from? How long has she been doing this? Mm-hmm. Has she recuperated some of her health, I guess, from other people? And it's stuff like that I want to know, but I'm glad they didn't say, because you can over explain something. I thought early on they do a lot of foreshadowing. What's up?
I want to just jump in because I wrote something along the lines of what you're saying in my notes. So when he says, leave the why to the cops and the shrinks, we are just here to find the cause, I wrote, this also seems like he's talking to us. Don't ask the how or why of how some of this works. Just focus on what's happening, basically, and who she was. And so I was like, I think he's talking to us. Don't ask why or what. Don't ask why. Just sit back and enjoy the show, basically. But go ahead.
Yeah, and early on, when they're doing the world building, they do a lot of foreshadowing. Tommy goes to the shutters, or the storm door, I guess.
Yeah.
And to go outside to go smoke. So you're like, okay, this exists in this basement, and you're like, they focus on the mirror in the corner, and you're like, okay, that's going to be used later. Like, they do a lot of stuff that sets up the world pretty well without being like, hey, everybody, don't forget, we have the mirror in the corner for emergencies. And it's like, they didn't do that. They didn't need to do that. And I think they killed it with how tight the script is. I gave it a 5.
Yeah, I'm with you. Honestly, you covered everything that I have in my notes. Like I said, I love setting up the info that we need later. So that first third of the movie, when they go through and you get the Bell story, you get the mirrors, you get the shots of family photos on the wall, like all that information is given to us. It's not told to us necessarily, the Bell is, but it's there for us to absorb. We can put this world together. We get not only the storm door, but we also get the elevator, knowing that there are two ways in there because the cop shows up in the elevator. So I liked that. Getting this idea too that it is disconnected from the family home. But the only other things I added to it was the line at the end of the opening scene when they find Jane in the dirt in the basement, and we have the lead detective on scene, and then someone else comes up and she basically reports that like the outside of the house is pristine, no signs of breaking and entering. It looks to me like they were trying to break out.
Yeah.
And then it cuts. And I'm like, that is a delicious little tease. It's so good. But then it's echoed at the end when they show up. And again, it says there's nothing keeping them from leaving. It looks like they were trying to escape again. And you get this full circle moment that like, oh, she caused all the murders at the house, in case you hadn't figured it out already. And now these are just more victims of it. And it's so good. The only other line that I wrote that really stood out that I liked, and I'm pretty sure I've heard it in other movies before, so it won't necessarily affect my score, but that everybody has a secret. Some are better at hiding them than others. I like that line. But yeah, other than that,
there was one other line when they're in the hallway. Brian Cox is talking about how none of this is possible, and Emile Hirsch goes, "I think we're pretty far past possible." And I was like, "That's pretty perfect for this situation."
That's true. I just think it is one of the best mysteries I've ever seen in a horror movie. Period. Like it's gripping. You want to know what's going on with Jane Doe. You want to know why there's a map on the inside of her skin. You like every time they unfold something, I'm like, where'd this come from? How'd this happen? I'm so curious. And they do a great job of keeping me entertained. So for me, it was a 5. The script was Ian Goldberg and Richard Nang. So kudos to you two, because it was awesome.
Hell yeah.
On to the acting from the 3 people in the film.
Well, the acting was fantastic in this movie. I really was all about it. And I mean, Jane Doe herself as a character just to lay there flat, make no kind of facial reaction at all, to be just blank faced like that. That's tough, man. And to get good long shots of that without any kind of like twitch or movement or anything. I mean, not much really goes into acting other than just, in this situation for her, other than just staying still, but just that flat, empty expression on the face that you see throughout the whole thing. And how some of the expression, like even though it's more of a special effect with the eyes when the color comes back, that kind of gives more of an impression of, the body, the person, the intent, what's going on towards the end of the film. But yeah, for Brian Cox and for Emile Hirsch, man, they were awesome. They were super good. It was believable that they had like this father-son relationship, and there's some little bit of underlying tension going there, so I thought they played it really well. The girlfriend, even though a bit character, she was cool. Sad that, Tommy took her out with a hatchet in the chest, thinking it was a dead body coming through the elevator after him, Boo-hoo, boo-hoo.
It was a great bait and switch. I love that scene.
Yeah, dude, just wow. I was like, holy shit. I really thought there was going to be a body, like a dead body coming through. I didn't think it was actually going to be the girlfriend. Like, man, totally caught me off on that one.
And it wrecks both of them too.
Like, Destroys everything.
And Brian Cox is like, and then Emile Hirsch is just losing it.
It also, like, that one scene effectively raises the stakes for the rest of the film. Like, it's just kind of ghostly and creepy and fun. And then somebody actually dies through that misdirection. And you're like, oh shit, this is intense. And it's just breakneck pace to the end from there.
Yeah, it was good delivery on all their parts, especially with Brian Cox and Emile Hirsch. So I definitely liked what they did, and I gave it a 5. Yeah.
Well, all right.
I also gave it a 5. But, Tommy, Brian Cox, and Emile Hirsch, no one underacted, no one overacted. I thought they did an amazing job. But the 5... It comes because of Jane Doe. Like she laid on the table and didn't move, and the camera was on her long enough where in body double movies where they're like, look at this effect or look at this scene to show you that it's two different people. Like one walks in front of the other, and you're like, you got me. It's two different people. The shots that they lingered on her were so long where you're like, this has to be a dead body, but you know it's not. And it's like they're just daring you to guess or to find them out on it. And she never moves, and it's amazing. But I also want to say there were shots where even though her expression doesn't change, just by slightly changing the angle of the camera, it's like a Rorschach test. It gives you her face is sinister in this shot and sympathetic in this shot. And it's like nothing changed, but maybe a slight angle of the camera. And it's so good that they got all of this out of someone who doesn't move. I loved it.
Yeah. You nailed it. Did you have more?
No.
Yeah. Jane Doe is strangely the standout. I mean, Brian Cox delivers. I've never seen him not deliver. Right. I like Brian Cox. He's always good. And I haven't seen a ton of Emile Hirsch, but what I have seen of him, he's good in. What was the other thing I saw him in? Anyways, he's good in this film. He's the girlfriend, she's the weak spot for me in the movie. The girlfriend is the weak spot. I don't think she's necessarily great. But Olwen Kelly, the Andre Overdahl said Olwen had the hardest part in the film, playing the dead body, of course. But he said, thankfully, she made everybody on set feel more comfortable. I guess she was great to work with. And I can't imagine myself being fully nude in front of a cast and crew for the entire filming of a movie every time I'm on scene. And I love that.
The shit was cold in there.
Yeah.
And to lay there like that so long and it's cold.
And I love that Andre mentions she made everyone else uncomfortable because, it is uncomfortable for everybody else too. So I love just that little note that she was great to work with. He chose her because she had extensive experience with yoga and knowing how to control her breath and her body. So because of that, it made her perfect for those longer scenes where we needed to believe that she wasn't breathing. That made her awesome for that role. I also, like you mentioned, the repeated shots of her face and how they're able to change the way we feel about her. And it's brilliant. I probably put that, I'll probably talk about that more in direction, but it's still fantastic. So I don't know. I'm a 4.5 on this. So yeah, and I'm trying to justify why I'm not a 5, because it is so good. but the girlfriend really didn't care for her performance much. And I just feel like the guys are, I don't want to say they're one note, but they're good. They're pretty great. So yeah, I'm going to stay with 4.5 on it.
The sheriff's performance can't convince you to go to a 5.
I actually like the sheriff, Michael McElligton.
Yep.
I've seen him before in other stuff too, and I'm not sure he
looks familiar.
Yeah,
Wasn't
either
he
he
in
has one
Game
of
of
those
Thrones?
faces.
Wait, was he?
I thought so.
See, that's
I know I've seen him in something.
He's Game of Thrones. That's it.
Okay, all right.
Yep. That's where I would recognize his face from, because the rest of his list. Oh, he was in Justice League. He was the bank robber that Wonder Woman knocks out
Ah,
at the beginning of Justice
Yes, I
League.
would remember that.
busted.
Yep. I do. I actually just was watching a comparison of Zack Snyder's version to the theatrical one, so that's why his face was familiar. Anyways, yeah, I'm 4.5 on that. The direction.
All right. So direction. So much foreshadowing that set things up in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I love the way they did that. You know, between the story with the bell, with the prank on the girlfriend, and then it actually coming into play later on when the dead body's moving down the hall, you know, and just that reinforcement of shadows moving and seeing reflections of things was pretty sweet. When you first see Tommy going out through the basement hatch doors to the outside, and you get to see like that kind of rickety old railing that's there, you know, and then seeing that come back into play at the end when Austin's trying to escape, when it breaks on him, he falls out and just goes splat, cracks his noggin, you know, just a lot of those small tells like that keep coming back around, that the way they played that throughout the whole film, I thought was pretty cool. So, yeah.
I know this is your favorite category to talk about.
I'm always, like I'll say it, I'm always horrible about talking about direction, but the way though that they had Tommy more so than Austin, how his character interacted with Jane Doe, and the way that connection that he had kind of deepens with the body throughout the process of taking part in discovering things, and how he comes to how they finally break down who she really is and how she got to be like this and what she really is. Mm-hmm. You know, it was pretty amazing in how Tommy decides he's going to take on the pain and everything that she suffered to try and help give her some sense of peace, as it were, you know, was crazy, but awesome. And then like just how everything that played out with the destruction of the entire group of people, between dad killing the girlfriend, son killing the dad, and then the son finally eating it at the end. And everyone being like, what the hell? What the hell is this? What happened? You know, when they finally get into the place. I just like the way they really ran that all together. So I kicked it at a 4.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not sure if that's directional talk, really, but that's what I did.
So I in my notes I had this was a $4 million budget. Andre Overdahl previously did Troll Hunter, which is an amazing movie. Since then, he's done Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which I thought was a bit more Hollywoody, like maybe studio intervention, because it wasn't quite as good as this. Like I feel like this is his best movie by a long shot, and it comes down to just an amazing sound design, an amazing visuals, like the mirror shots, it's like you said, all the little small things that they set up early on, and they just pay off so beautifully, and pacing. So often do I see issues. My biggest issue with a horror movie is right at the end of that second act, where it just goes dull or it goes slow, and they're trying to explain something, or they're trying to take a pause from the serial killer, and it's like, yeah, but you're also slowing down the pacing. You're making me bored of the movie, and this never had that. Like from start to finish, it's setting up the world, and then it's into the autopsy, and then it's just mayhem, 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 and I loved it. 5.
Yeah.
Sweet.
My score comes from the fact that this is such a simple premise that for it to be as fantastic as it is, it needed to be masterfully directed. And it was.
Yeah.
If he had missed on any of those things, from the setup to the pacing to the atmosphere, he nails atmosphere in this movie. The atmosphere is one of my favorite parts of it. It's just perfectly put together. I love how the opening shots of the morgue are these like slow pans that kind of give us a feel for the space. Like he is introducing the viewer to where we're about to spend the next, by that point, 60 minutes, or 70 minutes. He brings us into it, introduces us to it, does all the setup that we need, and then he starts checking off the boxes on what pays off. And none of it feels forced. None of it feels awkward or like, why didn't you cut that? It all satisfies. And it's honestly something that I would expect from a director with many movies under his belt, not one, really. So I'm sure there were other things before that, but Troll Hunter is the only thing of note. And since then, like you said, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, it was trying to jumble a bunch of separate stories together. It was fun atmosphere, but again, it fell short. And then I haven't seen The Last Voyage of Demeter yet, but I've heard it was just okay. So I do want to see it because Overdahl's talented. This movie is a testament to that. So I think he nailed it. It was a 5 for me. I mean, to also just set up the scenes and the shots with Jane on the table, and to the way he does it without being excessive in any area. He knows just where to cut, just where to set up the shot so that certain things are in it, certain things are not. He does a fantastic job of juggling this tricky scenario. Really, you have, I don't know how, like, this was originally meant for TV. It was an IFC film, which I haven't always understood how IFC works, because some of their stuff goes straight to TV, some of it does get released. I don't know how that works anymore, but it wasn't really a theatrical movie, and it should have been. But anyways,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I have it in the next section. I have notes that it was a worldwide gross was 6.2 on a 4 million budget, and that's because it just didn't go wide, and that's such a shame, because this movie in wide release would have done so well, in my opinion.
I think it would have had people talking. I do. I think it would have been, I don't want to say it would have been the next Paranormal Activity. Like when that movie hit theaters, it went nuts. But I want to say this one would have had people going. It would have done really well. The word of mouth would have spread and people would have shown up for this. So I gave it a 5. I thought that it's pretty masterfully directed, tastefully done. The emotional moments hit when they should. The intense moments hit just as they should. And honestly, I'm kind of a fan of bleak endings when they're done right. And this is a bleak ending that's done right. In like, yes. I'm not depressed at the end of this movie like I was at the end of Beau is Afraid. I was depressed because I spent 2.5 hours of my life watching that. This movie is a satisfied bleak ending where like, yeah, it's dark, everybody dies, but that it made sense, and it's fascinating. So I'm going to stop rambling now. I lost my thoughts on that.
And it's not the end of the story because she's off to another town to
Well, yeah.
wreak more havoc.
Then we can get the funeral of Jane Doe in the next town, and I don't want a sequel. I'll say that. So
I don't, but I would watch it.
I would too. I don't want, like I said, I would watch the funeral of Jane Doe. I don't want to watch the second autopsy of Jane Doe. I need a separate setting. Maybe the funeral director is trying to figure out who she is and researching, historical documents or whatever, and takes us down a different path of finding out who she is. I'd watch that. Before we jump into the next category, I want to tell you a little bit about Zencastr. When I was preparing for our 13 Nights of Halloween series, I was really searching for a way to streamline the process. I wanted a professional-looking setup to invite our guests to. I wanted quality audio and video recording, and I wanted the easiest way to release the episodes to as broad of an audience as possible. This is how I landed on Zencastr. It is now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Just log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. And speaking of audio quality, have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So if you are thinking of starting your own podcast or just want to streamline what you are already doing, go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code AVERAGECUSTOMER, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. That's average customer, one word. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all of my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. So let's dive into the next category. It factor, Jonathan. We kind of touched on it a little bit just now, but...
Yeah, you did a little bit. That's okay, though. With the it factor, as far as like impact, I think that, like you guys said, this did not get the reception it should have. This could have been so much bigger had it had more promotion and more option to be put out there. Because like this, in a way, this is like its own other kind of like side branch of horror. It's crazy to think what the impact of a dead body can have. And the power that it holds over other people, especially in this situation. The learning about who Jane Doe is, and so just deep spoiler here, to find out that she was basically someone who was hunted as a witch, wasn't a witch, and then became a cursed totem, as it is basically. She's not alive, not really dead, kind of in between, but still has power, and still has an ability to do something and to make changes and to mess with people. That's crazy terrifying in a lot of ways, man. That could be its own whole set of stuff. And I think there could be a lot of expansion on that if kept. I mean, even just with this, I could definitely see sequels to this coming around until somebody finally stops the process in some way, Just super freaking sweet, man. I give it a 4.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So for It Factor for me, again, it didn't do too well because it didn't get a wide release. It's a 3.2 on Letterboxd. I feel like that's mostly because I don't think people have really seen it.
Yeah.
This, in my opinion, is like the definition of hidden gem. Like, this is the movie. Every blog post that ever talks about hidden gem horrors should have, because no one saw it and everyone should. But even though I'm saying that, It Factor, I have to give it like a 2, because it just, nobody saw it, and it's so sad. So sad that it has no real cultural significance.
That's entirely accurate. So I would agree. This is... Sorry, I lost my train of thought because I was looking up straight to VHS movies of the 80s to compare this to. Oh, I don't... Is this true?
What? Is it, Tim? We don't know.
I don't know. This website is saying Killer Clowns from Outer Space was a straight to VHS movie.
Really?
But I'm not going to take the time to read the paragraph and find out what it's saying about that. But it also says Sleepaway Camp is. So, I mean, those are... I was looking at that to compare because this is like more accurate to the time period of this movie's release. This is going to Family Video on a Friday night to pick up your Little Caesars and looking for a horror movie and finding this on the DVD shelf as a new release and being like, oh, I haven't heard of this movie, taking it home and being like, holy shit, that was amazing. So that's what the word of mouth is, how people have heard about this movie. I vaguely remember it coming out because I was old enough when it came out, but I didn't see it. It didn't get a theatrical release. And for a lot of people, those straight to DVD movies, for usually correct reasons, have bad reputations. So this one doesn't deserve it at all, but it's got this growing love in the horror community that I'm seeing more and more people talk about it. I'm glad we're talking about it. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it, bring it to people's attention.
Give it time, it will flow.
Yep. This is a movie you should see. And to what Jonathan said earlier, this is my favorite movie involving a witch ever. I don't normally like... There's vampires and witches are two routes in horror I don't go down that often. So I love this. I love this witch movie. So I did give it a 3 because it's got... Those who have seen it tend to love it, but it really didn't have wide impact whatsoever. So I'm a 3 on that. It
has growth potential.
Yes.
It does.
Final thoughts and final... Well, nope, we're score out of 10. I'm moving ahead too fast. Enjoyment factor. So out of 10.
Oh, I'd definitely give this a 10 all day. This is a 10 all day to me. I don't do that often, but this is one I was just like, I was on my seats, on the edge of my seat so much. There was so much suspense to it in trying to guess what's going to happen next, and then it not being that, and just the craziness of it. Like I said earlier today, man, I've been talking to so many people at work about this and like recommending they check it out. Some people have heard of it. There's a couple people I talked to, they've heard of it and are aware of what it is, but just haven't watched it yet. And I'm spamming it on everybody I can. I love this film. Definitely, this is one I wouldn't mind having this on like DVD or Blu-ray or whatever. I don't care. I would definitely have this in my collection. This would be one I would deem worthy of owning.
So is this my favorite recommendation so far?
Yes.
For you, Jonathan? Yes.
It is. It
Nice.
is. Absolutely.
Nice.
Good.
So, it's 10. It's obviously a 10 for me.
A 10.
A 10. I remember when I went and saw The Ring in theaters with my wife. We got home at past midnight, 1 maybe. We turned on all the lights in the house and unplugged all the TVs. And then we had a nice conversation about something completely different.
Yep.
And I feel like had I seen this movie in theaters when it came out, I would have done the exact same thing. Maybe not unplug the TVs, but I would have come home, turned on all the lights,
Check the
closed
basement.
all the doors, and had a nice, fun conversation about something completely different. Because it is so good, it's so effective. That like that it bums me out that I never saw it in theaters. It's that good.
Mm.
Right on. Hell yeah.
I would love to see like a 10th anniversary or a 20th, whatever, limited release in theaters. Put it back in for a little bit. Wide release it for the first time, actually.
Yeah.
It could happen. You never know.
Let the fans show up. Yeah, it's happened. I feel like it's happened more in the last 2 years of my life than it ever did before. But maybe it's because I'm paying attention. It's a 10 for me. 10 for me is what I turn it on again immediately, and the answer is yes. So I would, because it's such a journey from beginning to end, and you uncover new things each time you watch. New lines, new clues, new hints, new foreshadowing, a shot that you didn't think anything of the first time, and second time you're like, oh, what? It's one of those films. And I too wish I had seen it in theaters. I think it'd create a deeper level of love with this movie. Not that, my score is already pretty high, but like you said, Paul, you were telling that story, and I love horror movies for that. The ones that get under your skin and you have to like distract yourself from them. The last one that actually did that to me, I was trying to think of the last one that did that. And I remember watching, it's one of the strangest movies I've ever seen, The Lighthouse.
Oh, God. Don't get me started on that one, dude. Jeez, that was a weird movie. Back when I used to live in Illinois before moving to Texas, my ex-girlfriend, she got me to sit down and watch it with her. And I was just like, dude, what the is this? Wow. That was so deep, so crazy, so weird. Dude. Willem Dafoe was awesome in that movie.
He's amazing. Yeah. But that was one of the few movies that when my girlfriend and I, or my wife now, when we were dating, we watched that movie. We rented it, brought it home. It was already late at night, and we're watching it. And like, we had to watch like Family Matters or something after it for a long time.
Jeez.
Just because we were like, that got under. It's not horror in the traditional sense, but it definitely gets to you. And that was the last time I lived for that in a movie. So I agree. I feel like this movie could do that for people. Currently, I have a Halloween trip planned with my family, my siblings specifically, not my parents. And I want to show them this. I've been trying to think of what movie to show them. And I think this is going to be the one, because it's not very long, so they can't complain about it being 2 hours. It's a solid 83 minutes, I think. And it's effective. It's just so good. So 10 out of 10 for me. Final score for you, Jonathan.
45. Oh, yeah. Colt 45 on that rig. Yeah. Hitting 45. I think it's probably one of my top scoring films so far, if not the top scored film I've done.
I want to go back and find all your scores because I want to say that probably
comparison time.
I want to say it probably is.
Man, it's like I said, this is such a badass film, and I really liked how they used the radio with that one line. That it goes seems like it's a normal song, and then it kind of trails off to like what you assume is Jane Doe. Influencing. You're not going to make it out alive. That dude, such badassery, and just the way they use the radio just to scare the shit out of Austin anyway, and that early part of the film, that was cool. But there was just so much awesomeness. It was very gripping. It was a gripping film to just like, oh my God, I can't wait to see what's going to happen next kind of situation. Just waiting in that little sense of like fear that in the back of your brain, you're like, oh my goodness, such awesomeness.
Accurate description, gripping. Yep. Paul, did you see yours?
Yeah, 45 for me as well.
Imagine.
To go back to what Tim said about the direction, how, any one little thing could go wrong and it ruins the whole thing. Just how lean this is. Like there was a clothing warehouse in the UK where they took all the stuff out and built these sets. It was made by a Norwegian director. First time English film about, two coroners in Virginia. and a father and son duo, and it's like so many things could have gone wrong, but the fact that everything went so right, it's like a perfect storm of a horror movie. I will recommend this to anybody. I love this movie.
I love the two coroners in Virginia, and the movie was shot in Kent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. We can just pretend. Like, can we actually shoot it in Virginia? I don't know how those things.
I mean,
work.
Alien was shot in Pinewood, so it's like there's some pedigree to shooting horror movies in England.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So for me, it was a 46 and a half. I had a 4.5 in there. So 46 and a half for me. This puts all of our scores together. I kind of already gave you my final thoughts. This is my favorite witch movie ever, and it's an easy recommend for anybody who hasn't seen it. And I also think it's kind of maybe, I want to say it's a good gateway horror film because it's more medical gore than like slasher gore. And the ghosty stuff is effective, but minimal, maybe. I don't know. I would recommend this to anybody, even if they didn't like horror. So exactly. Our average together is a 45, which puts it in the amazing category, or 4.5 stars out of 5 altogether. So again, This is going off of our goal of giving you a guide for group scenarios. So you have a Halloween party coming up. I know we have 13 Nights of Halloween coming up as well. Some of those weren't meant for group settings, I'll tell you that. Some of those would not go over well. This movie is most likely going to please a Halloween party that's sitting there to watch a movie. Most likely. Most definitely. So, any other thoughts on it?
I think I've said all I need to say.
Wide.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Paul,
Yep. No, that's it. I'm pleased with this film.
Okay.
To say the least.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being here.
You are welcome to shoot me a message and join us anytime. It was a great conversation. Enjoyed having you. Trying to think of what else. Yeah, so I said we were doing this because of you. You shared something about, I think there were 3 different horror movies, and this was one of your favorites. And I was like, oh yeah, I had mentioned it to Jonathan like a week or 2 before about possibly doing this. And so when I saw that, I was like, hey, you want to hop on with us? You want to do it? And it sealed the deal. I'm glad. This is our perfect final episode before Halloween. So
awesome. Yeah, that's right.
So Jonathan, we're done once these 13 episodes are out. We get to take the rest of the year off.
Heck yeah, I can make a list of other stuff we can watch.
Yeah, planning season 3 out.
Yeah.
Got to work on the branding for season 3. I mix it up every year. So
That's good to have change, man.
We'll change the feel of season 3. So, okay. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, anytime, bro.